everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. It is Monday. We're back, almost like a post-match show going over here, fresh after the big win from earlier today. Lots to talk about. Of course, there's trivia. Of course, there's Bickler live from the old stadium. What's going on there, Bickler?
It's just another beautiful Monday here in North Carolina.
Is it beautiful? Alan says it's warm and wet Houston. I would just.
That's what she said.
Oh, good one. And with us, as always, but in front of a new wall that he just put up, looks like fresh brickwork back there. Nicely done, nicely done. Gally is with us. Gally, what's up, man?
New computer, new shit, new day. At least we won.
And a new wall looks like, but yes, it's nice.
Clean masonry.
Odd choice of dark colored bricks randomly thrown on there, but we'll go with that. Well, here we go. How about fucking Cujo? Says Buzz. But, well, what do you know? That's part of our trivia today. We're going to talk about the game a lot, and obviously we do have to talk about Curtis Jones. Aside from a couple of other performances, I'm going to get your guys' take on and get everybody else's take on. But today's trivia is based on our boy Curtis Jones. So, Bickler, of course, we're going to start with you. Number of goals Curtis Jones has scored in the Premier League. How many do you think he's had? And give us number of assists as a tiebreaker, because I know you guys are going to nail this. So you should have a tiebreaker.
Yeah, totally. 7 goals, 4 assists.
Okay. Gally, what do you have?
I feel like that was so confident. He
I
heard the stat
was like, did you fucking Google this before me? Like,
no, I definitely did.
But then I was like, that would require.
You think I'd be that proactive about anything?
Prep work, yeah. We're lucky he's on here at the time required, 2 minutes before. So
it's a good point. I was basically gonna say 5 goals, 4 assists, so I'll go with that.
Damn, dude. Okay, well, we need a different tiebreaker then. How many cars has he had all this time? He's had 6 goals. Is that what you had, Gally?
I had 5.
You had 5, and you had 7. So you guys are in the middle there. 6 goals, 4 assists. You guys nailed. When you said 4, that's why I was like, man, did he prep for this? So let's do another tiebreaker. Number of cards he has seen. Somebody's gonna win this.
4.
Curtis and Gally.
I'll say he's seen maybe more than that, maybe like 6.
He's only seen 2 yellow. Oh, 4 yellows actually total. So dead on there, Bickler. Bickler gets
that one. I googled for sure.
That was pretty shocking, actually. He looked like yeah, it is only 6. He said 6. I mean, that's when he first started. I mean, honestly, like we've talked about him for a long time, so it feels like he's older. He's only 22. So he did come first in the scene as an 18-year-old in the 19-20 season. Only 6 games, 1 goal. Then 24 games in 22 to 21, 1 goal, 2 assists. 21-22, 15 games, 1 goal, 1 assist. And to be fair, he's had like the goals recently, but this season, 16 games, 3 goals, and 1 assist. These are appearances when we say games. So it is kind of skewed on a guy like Jones, where he might just show up in the for 5 minutes or something, similar to what Elliott's had today in the last 2 minutes or something like that. But so let's talk about the game. Lineup was pretty much a no-brainer for the most part, Gally. I think like we all nailed it for the most part. We did not know if it would be Diaz or Jota. So I don't know if there's much to say, but it's pretty straightforward these days, right? In terms of who we're going to go out there if everybody has the same amount of rest.
Yeah, if the side is healthy and fit and ready to play. So basically, if Henderson can go,
yeah,
and Diaz, I think at this point, if Henderson and Diaz pass fitness tests, this 11 is what you're going to see in, for these last 2 matches. And it's been that way for, I think, 2 or 3 now since Diaz came back. So for me, that's the starting 11. That's the best 11. You kind of ended at that.
How about you, Bickler? I mean, did you expect anything different or wish for anything different?
No, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I think, once Diaz was going to be back fully fit, I think that was always going to be the selection. I didn't keep up on training, so the Nunez not even making the bench thing was news to me, but get it.
Same, actually. It must be like a Monday curveball over there. I missed it as well. I noticed it when I saw the lineup. Actually, I noticed it when Bickler said, "Where's Nunez?" That's what I noticed it. So let's start with Curtis Jones, because obviously that's going to be like the big talking point over here tonight. I mean, we talked about him a lot, obviously, over the years on these podcasts. And I know actually recently when I was doing my travels and you guys had a podcast, I remember we even have a short on this on our YouTube channel. And by the way, if you're not following or subscribed, whatever the word is for the YouTube channel, head on over there and do it on YouTube. Just search American Scousers, youtube.com/American Scouser. Boom, that's us. But we do have a short over there where Gally actually talks about Curtis Jones and his initial, almost like it's overconfidence, leaning on cocky attitude, perhaps kind of like damaging him afterwards. Like he had those performances and then kind of like hurt him a little bit. You think Gally now, when we look back, you think he has kind of learned his lesson that it's not going to be as easy and he's going to have to put in work, or maybe the pain of not getting the minutes that he thought maybe was in the bag? Because we see a lot from him that we did not see before, especially defensively, especially when it comes to pressing.
Yeah, I will absolutely say that I think the kid has turned the corner when it comes to just his professional work ethic and demeanor. And I think sometimes that comes with becoming a professional and figuring things out, and just kind of, for every player, it happens at a different stage in their career. And I think for some, you want it to happen when they're a 19-year-old kid and they hit some world-class goal against Everton, so that maybe they read too much of their press clippings. And for him, it went the opposite direction when that ball hit the upper right-hand corner of that net. And I think in some ways the last 18 months has been a humbling experience that has led to him getting like a renaissance and a second chance. And I'll raise my hand to be one of the people who was questioning whether he was good enough. And by questioning, I'll say explicitly explaining to anyone who would listen, he is not good enough.
And I
could have been wrong.
To be fair, at the time, his performances did not look good enough, because we saw the weaknesses and we felt like the way this is going, it's not going to work. And I still stand by that, because, I mean, based on the performances then, especially what he did defensively, it was like, hey, this is not going to work. A couple of cute turns is not going to get you a starting 11 job and a long-term midfield position on this team. So let's go back to what you just said. You said you felt like he's turned the corner. Should we be confident that he's turned the corner, Bickler? Or I feel like he had this confidence that, Gally had talked about at the time too, and it kind of got shattered with some poor performances. He did get some criticism. I still argue that, he would have gone a lot more normally if he was not from like the youth academy and stuff like that. But you think he has turned and matured in understanding that there is going to be ups and downs and he has to kind of keep working to be where he's at? Or a couple of bad games and this kid kind of can go back to where he was, I don't know, like 12 months ago or 18 months ago?
I mean, I certainly think that can happen. Well, I also think that can happen to any player. So, I mean, I think what has impressed me about Jones the most recently is the things that led me to think that he was either a championship or sort of low to mid-table player on a team were things that I didn't think he would be able to develop inside of his game, like positional discipline and the ability to sort of read those channels and the ability to consistently press and essentially make the players around him better. I remember when we were starting Jones, we would always discuss what players do we put around Jones to basically cap him as a liability. Now we're looking at a player that's making Fabinho and Henderson better. That is a massive hat tip to Curtis Jones and how far he's come. I also want to say, the thing that worries me about this with Jurgen Klopp is that he uses it as an excuse not to address a position need. That's my one worry, because we know Jurgen's loyalty to young players, to the players that he already has. And for me, Jones's next development, the next stage of his development, is going to come from being a really key rotational piece of that midfield. And that's going to come from surrounding him with A-list and starting 11 players that he's got to compete against day in and day out. And I really worry that if we consider him a key piece for the starting 11 in the next year, he loses that. And then we're in a position where if he's hurt or his form dips, we're right back to square one. So I definitely want to take a massive cap tip. I was completely wrong on Curtis Jones, but I still think at 22 years old in the position he's in, he has to have pieces around him, and those are the pieces we need to have.
Yeah, Brian says he's still a squad player at best, in my opinion. I mean, I agree, and that's what the exact fear I have is we're saying, oh, we already have this midfielder, and kind of like, I mean, it just haunts me to this day, Klopp counting the midfielders in that press conference and basically naming everybody in the training room as part of the midfield, and then we were in this situation. If we're counting Curtis as 5th or 6th in that midfield depth, I think you're in pretty decent shape, especially if he's like 6th, I think. And then you have like a couple of the other young guys there, maybe
right.
like Carvalho, stuff like that.
You think he's 6, so he's going to be 6 next season. So you're signing 4 midfielders?
No, I'm signing probably 3 midfielders. And
I mean, you're not still putting Henderson ahead of him, are you?
If
you are, that's crazy.
I mean, I like crazy. If you have a League Cup game, I'm probably starting Jones, but on a big game, I'm probably putting in Henderson in the 60th, 70th minute.
This is the
thing. We have disagreement.
No, but this is the part where I think it's unfair. So here's where I'll come back to. We have just talked about a whole season where everyone complained about the defense not being good enough, right? The defense was bad, and when everyone wanted to shit on the defense, we criticized the midfield for not being good enough and weakening the defense. And then when the attacking team wasn't playing well and guys weren't scoring and Mo didn't look good and Nunez was disconnected, the midfield was so bad. We've won 7 matches on the spin. Curtis Jones has started 6 of them. He has been the best midfielder in all 6 he has started.
Okay.
And the one he subbed out of, we'd argue he really should have started, but Klopp just kind of rotated. And we all question whether that was the right decision. To Paul's point, he's made everyone around him better. Fabinho has looked regenerated because he's playing alongside a guy right now. I'll say this. Curtis Jones, in these 6 out of 7 matches, has given a better 6 out of 7 performance than Thiago has his entire Liverpool career at any moment for 6 out of 7 matches in a row. And by the way, I looked it up today. He's only done it 3 times in his Liverpool career where he started 6 out of 7.
I can't recall a lot of times where he's had that many games in a row.
This is my point. This is a moment where I think a kid has stepped up. I'm not saying he should be a first-choice starter next year.
So where are you putting him for?
The idea he doesn't come in next year in number 4 is kind of crazy to me. Like, we're going to sign 2 players better.
I feel like if we're putting him 4, we're in deep shit.
Well, if that's the case, then all of this was for nothing. Like, if we make Champions League, it's basically almost on the roll of the move of Alexander-Arnold to midfield and Curtis Jones actually giving life to the midfield and Mo coming back to life, which all coincided with Jones playing behind him for 4 straight matches.
Though, Jones is on the opposite side, really. But here's my thing. That's what I was going to ask you guys is, does Jones look better in that midfield and make Fabinho and, around him look better? Is that partially because Trent has slid into midfield a lot more and enables Jones to make these runs a bit more freely? Like we've seen twice now. It was almost like an identical goal he scored. Is he not going to be able to do it? Is he able to do that because we have also put Trent in midfield as well when we're attacking?
Anyway, you asking Paul?
Yeah, either one of you guys. What do you guys think? Okay,
go ahead,
I guess I
can't say that definitively. I can't remember. I know the Jones run started in Chelsea, and I don't remember when we switched tactics exactly. I'll tell you this. I certainly don't think it hurts Jones because basically it puts us in a double pivot and pushes him further up on that channel. So I definitely think it puts him in a better spot. But like I said earlier, man, like there are things in his game that he's never done, regardless of like what formation we were in.
Yeah,
in terms of his off the ball movement and the things that he's doing in the runs that he's making. So I will say that it doesn't hurt, but I don't think it makes up the totality of what we're seeing.
I just go ahead, Gally. I think like the sample sizing is too small. I guess that's my main concern.
I mean, I understand the sample sizing too small. I just we waited. We asked for Naby Keita to give us 8 or 9 starts in a row to give us an idea of what he was. Curtis Jones got 8 or 9, is going to have 8 or 9 starts in a row by the end of the season. And I feel like for once we're asked a young player to step up and give us a performance. And I feel like this kid's giving us a performance. He's scoring goals, he's creating goals, and he's not creating mistakes. And when we talk about the tactical change, moving Alexander-Arnold to the midfield did 2 things for me. It gave Curtis Jones a real role in this midfield and in the future of this setup, and it absolutely ended Harvey Elliott's time at Liverpool Football Club. And you almost saw it today with the substitution. He put him on because he had no other choice, and it was like, we're up 3-0, we can do this. I mean, he put Carvalho on first, which lets you know where Harvey has gone down in the world. Like, he remembered Fabio's name and was like, you should go in and play today. But I do think I think the way that shift of the formation happens, to Paul's point, I don't think it's all coincided with the move of Trent, but I think it gives a luxury to a midfielder to run past the attackers, which we haven't had in a long time. Curtis Jones has 5 goals this year in the midfield. And, like, we joke about it, but if we think about, like, Keita and Ox and all the things we want, and Thiago and all the things, we haven't gotten 5 goals combined out of everybody in the midfield. And this kid just started playing a month and a half ago. So something is working right. And I think if you don't think you're going to see a lot of them next year, I think you're crazy, because I think he will be like, I think Klopp already believes he's right there fighting for a starting spot. And I hope I'm with Paul. Like, I want Mason Mount and maybe McAllister or, James Ward-Prowse. I want 2, 3 and him fighting for 4 and 5. But I think Curtis Jones is going to be right there with a shout, because they might look at this and say, we got a 35. We would have bought a player for $30 million. We don't need to. We have him, because we were going to sell this guy for peanuts.
Yeah, I think it eliminates, maybe depth issues, especially with so many people leaving. And it's not like, there's like a wide receiver depth chart or anything like that. But in my mind, if he's like the 4th name we're counting, I don't think that's a solid midfield. Where do you put him, Bickler? I know you never asked you in terms of, I know it's not like a hierarchy or like a depth chart, but I'm like, the way I'm looking at it is I'm hoping we sign 2, ideally 3 new players to this midfield. And I would still put obviously Fabinho and stuff. Oh, that's probably why I'm in my head. I want him to be like 6th, probably in my head, just because maybe I'm like overrating Henderson. I know not everybody's a big fan, but if it's in a big game, I want Henderson out there coming in, let's say 20 minutes to go, as opposed to Jones, because I trust Hendo more, if that makes sense. What do you think, Bickler?
I think I feel most comfortable if he's sitting there battling for 4th and 5th spot in the rotation. Like, if we added two studs, right, and you're essentially looking at 2 locked-in starters, and then Fabinho, Henderson are in that conversation for that 3rd spot, depending on the opponent in the rotation and where the legs are, and then you've got your depth, right? And I think Jones on that next wave behind that makes sense to me. It still makes me very.
Bajcetic comes back. So I'll ask both of you, I guess. But Bickler, let's start with you. Bajcetic comes back. Obviously, they don't play the same exact spot. But in terms of, how you consider a good midfielder, do you put him above or behind Jones right now? Probably not fair on Bajcetic because we have an even smaller sample.
I think they're probably right in the same category, to be perfectly honest, because I think one's coming in for Fabinho. You're not ever going to sub Jones for Fabinho. You know what I mean? You're not ever going to play him in the double pivot. You're not going to have him play a holding role. So I think I think those players are paired off positionally in the 2 different camps, essentially. So, I mean, I don't know. I still think, Bajcetic may still be looking at that third wave, especially if we add another holding mid. I mean, because I still don't feel comfortable running that midfield with Fabinho starting every match. Like, there's got to be we have to have a serviceable holding mid that can come in and consistently hold it down against key opponents. That isn't Fabinho. Because what if Fabinho gets hurt? What if he gets hurt? And second of all, we've seen what this mileage looks like on him right now. He only looks normal. He just only looks normal because he's playing with help next to him and we're playing once a week, right? I think people forget that we're playing once a week right now.
Exactly, yeah. That makes a big difference. Go ahead, Gal.
No, and that's the whole problem. And my joke was going to be, have I told you how much Tyler Morton looks like he's put on some weight? Because that's the answer right now if they don't sign a player. People don't realize it is Bajcetic and Morton, and we can't go into a year where we're going to sign big players. And that's where my, Jones 5th or 6th, until I see 2 or 3 or 4 signings, we're losing a lot of players at a time where we need to strengthen in our midfield, right? We know that. So if we sign 2 stud players, let's just say we get a Mount-esque player and either a McAllister or a James Ward-Prowse type player, that's just 2 pieces in a midfield. We probably still need a backup for Fab, and then we still need more cover at other sections of the pitch, which is why I come back to the Jones being 4th or 5th option of actually being a key component to the midfield, because what Klopp knows is he believes in his eye. And if they qualify for Champions League or get this close and get into Europa in 5th, and that is coming down off Jones barreling in this end of the season, he's going to go into that preseason and Klopp is going to do everything to make sure his chest is just as stuck out. He'll start the first preseason match. He might start the first match of the year. Klopp does this with the side. If anything, this kid to me is the embodiment of the second half of this season. And this is crazy for me to say because I basically wanted him at Coventry, because I didn't think they were good enough for the championship.
Yeah, I know what you're saying for the Champions League thing, but I mean, look at where Reece Williams and Nat Phillips are right now, too. You know what I mean? In terms of, mind you, he has to play him with a gun to his head. That's a different story.
Different.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's why I want him as 5th, maybe 6th. Shelton is at him at 4 or 5, because I do want those signings to push him back there. And if we start by him, penciled in as the 3rd or 4th, we're in deep trouble. I think 4th, we're in deep trouble. So I want to get to that. I want to ask you guys for some of the names that are being mentioned and how they would make impact. But before we move on from Curtis Jones, so let's talk about, you mentioned Carvalho coming in. And we've talked about Carvalho before in terms of his role and stuff like that. So now that we have kind of admitted how we kind of misjudged how Curtis can change his game, do you think, Bickler, a year down from here, we can say something similar about Carvalho, where he has learned from his time away and not getting any minutes to kind of change his game enough to be able to earn some spots and minutes?
I mean, anything's possible, right? Here's my thing with Carvalho. He just doesn't have, I don't think he has the physical tools to do it. Those are the things that you can't really control. You can get better technically. You can find positional discipline. You can understand the system better. You can understand what your time on the ball looks like when you have it and where the ball is supposed to go next. But it's very hard, especially in this midfield system, to be able to be that size and consistently hold off players and retain the ball and recycle the ball in the position you need to. And he doesn't have the top end pace to play up top. So I just worry about the physical intangibles, the things that you can't train with Carvalho.
Yeah, that's fair, because Curtis does fit the profile in terms of, size and stuff like that, similar to what we had with Hando, what we had with Genie and stuff like that. But what do you think, Gali? I mean, even if it is not in the midfield, will he carve himself a role in a similar formats or not really?
I fear that he won't, honestly. I fear that the best case scenario at this point might be sending him out on loan. I think a foreign loan would actually be best. Like, I think sending him to like La Liga and letting him rip shit up, or sending him to Serie A and letting him be really, really great at a good club. Like, I wouldn't send him to a shit club. Like, I'd try to send him to like Milan or like Napoli or like somewhere where he might play a little bit and get a role, and someone might want to actually buy him, and there'd be a built-in buy-in clause, like 30-40 million pound will make a good profit. I don't think he ever makes it at Liverpool in this iteration, because he never looked like I love the player at Fulham. He never looked like a Jurgen Klopp player to me, ever. And we all tried to say, like, he could be Bobby, he could be this. And we were like, but where? And then Klopp's like, he's an 8 and he's going to play in my midfield. And I was like,
I think the loan to like Serie A or La Liga is an interesting shout, because I think a lot of what he does and what he's good at and what he looks like kind of reminds me of Suso, who just went out went over to Italy, and just, we were like, what the hell? Like, he just absolutely smashed it over there.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think the physical thing is the deal. And I think when we signed him, I think at the time we were talking about like either like a formation change, and that's maybe where he fits in, because we were trying to fit him in. Or the only other scenario was because I think all felt like he's not really suited for this midfield, the way we play midfield and the way.
That's when we thought for sure we were going to see a 4-2-3-1.
Yes,
right.
He was going to be playing. And when we didn't, we were like, "Well, maybe
stupid us,
Bobby." Like, it was just like, and then like, not really, because he really does not have the strength. But this brings me now to the next thing. So now we are seeing more and more from Gakpo and what he can be to hopefully replace Bobby over time. I mean, we're huge fans of Bobby over here. Well, at least Bickler and I are, but
I like kids too. Like that Declan Rice video with the kid was great. I know Gally was all irritated, stopping around the house the rest of the day.
The great part of today's match was they sang Bobby's song for 6 minutes in the road stand. And one of the reporters wrote after the match, if Trent doesn't bury that ball on the free kick, they sing that song for another 10 minutes. They only stopped singing the Bobby song because Trent hit the free kick, and they were like, shit, we got to do something else. We got to cheer this guy on now. It was pretty goddamn cool.
Yeah, that is nice to see. I mean, him getting the love, and you can see he was embarrassed as hell after the game too when he went over the stands and stuff. But Bickler, what do you see from Gakpo so far? Like I said, I mean, we're huge fans of Bobby, and he's like the unicorn. We talked about this a lot. But what do you see that's better than Bobby and not as good as Bobby at the moment?
I mean, he obviously doesn't have sort of that flair that we expect from Bobby. I don't think his vision is quite as good as Bobby, in terms of like, he doesn't quite see passes that Bobby sees, in my opinion. What I think he's better at in Bobby is, I think that, like, I can't even believe I'm saying this though, I think like his hold up play is better than Bobby's. Mm-hmm. And that feels so weird to say. Part of that is just because he's so fucking big. He's a big boy. He is a big dude. Like, and I think that, like, I love that he dropped so deep into the mids, because I don't think we knew that about him when we got him as a player. I don't think any of us had seen him sort of drop in that far and basically act as an additional midfielder, which is what we love about Bobby. I don't think he springs a counter as efficiently and effectively and as dangerously as Bobby does. Bobby was that axis that when the ball kind of came out of possession, he was the one that sprung the attack for the most part. I don't know that Gakpo sees that quite yet, but I mean, Gakpo is a bigger version, like physically bigger version of what Bobby does, which, you know, I always called him a unicorn because I just thought we'd never see that again. I didn't think, and I think we probably won't see a player that has a combination of the blue collar work ethic in that sort of Brazilian samba like that we get with Bobby, which is such a unique sort of combination. So I think we lose that, but we get a young, versatile attacker who can essentially play across all three positions if needed. He's like genuinely two-footed. And I think, I mean, there's a lot to love about him. I think he's going to be a big, big piece moving forward in a way that I did not see coming. I did not see him locking down that sort of holding role, that sort of like almost false nine role when we play that. And the crazy thing about that is like that was one of my major concerns outside of midfield is what does life look like after Bobby? And we almost, in my opinion, it feels like we backed our way into that, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to that in terms of the weakness. I think his release is a lot slower. And I don't know if that's kind of like confidence or not being used to it. I mean, we kind of take it for granted where, when we had the Mo, Mane, Bobby, they almost did not even have to look where the other one is at, where he's running to and the movement and stuff. It was so natural flowing. And obviously that comes with like time. Hopefully that will come with like Gakpo too. I feel like sometimes he does not see the runs develop and he kind of hangs on to it too long. How about you there, Gally? I mean, give me something that you feel like he brings more than Bobby, but not there yet with Bobby.
Well, I will say when it comes to like the hanging on the ball and just kind of not acting as fast, I think that is part and parcel of the fact that we forget that he's been a Premier League player for 4 months.
Yeah.
And from the day he walked in the league, he was asked to basically play a position he had never played at the professional level, like at a club level, which is like the center forward, number 9 offset position in a whole new country, about 3 levels up than where he was. And I think that's where sometimes I don't think people are giving him enough credit. Like I'll hear people talk about Anthony will have like 11 good minutes for United. He'll score a worldy goal and like maybe get 2 shots on target. And people talk about it's finally starting to work for him. Like it takes time to assimilate from the Eredivisie. And then, like, you think about Gakpo coming in January, like, needing to hit the ground running just like Diaz did last year and absolutely doing it. And now, like, his numbers are, really that much better than most of some other players who have been here all year long or signed all season. So I think Gakpo sometimes gets lost. So if I were to say one thing that he's done better than Bobby or he's doing better than Bobby is he's assimilated to the Premier League quicker. And he did it in a way that makes me actually believe that it's only going to get better for him. Because he already looked like a Premier League, to Paul's point, he looked like a Premier League built human before he ever actually proved he could play. Like, first thing you have to do in the Premier League, in my opinion, is have the physical size to compete. And then once you do that, you kind of prove it with your skills. And I think we're starting to see it with Gakpo. I think when it all gets said and done, we're going to look at the Gakpo signing as one of like the great, great, great FSG signings. Like for price per dollar, It'll be up there. It won't be Robbo, but it'll be up there. Like great, great, great. Not James Milner, but pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like physical potential, he definitely has the size over Bob. Bobby's not as big of a dude, but he's strong. He has the strength. Gakpo has the size and the speed as well. I think like over like physically, like if you look at like physical numbers, I think he's better than Bobby. He just has to get better at that interplay. And I think that will come over time. I think that's a good point that he has been so good, but like Gally says, we forget that he came in at like January. It feels like he's been here all along. And like we had a similar thing with Diaz too. It's just like, either that's good scouting or backing into it. I don't know what you want to call it. Part of it is luck. It's all about timing and stuff like that. But I think he's going to fill that role. And like Bigler, I was kind of like worried about that too. And I think partially Bobby did not get a lot of recognition for all the stuff he was doing off the ball and all that kind of stuff because he never showed it off with like numbers and they were like, you're a striker, you should be getting goals and all that kind of stuff. So he did a lot of stuff that I think Gakpo is doing a lot of the same stuff. So kind of like Bobby, I don't think he'll get like credits as well. So here's another question I had. So as I watch these games, I'm kind of more projecting. I know there's a top 4 chance, so we'll talk about the top 4 chances at the end, but kind of like watching it almost like preseason, trying to project what we can do in the further. So here's the question I have. Bickler, let's start with you on this one. So we're throwing names, we're naming people in the depth chart in midfield and stuff like that. Let's say we have a guy like McAllister. Let's say today's 11 features McAllister instead of Fabinho. How do you think that will look different? These are the
I would think so. The rest of the lineup's the same.
The rest of the lineup is the same. You have McAllister instead of Fab, basically playing Fab's role because we talked about this before that he can play as the 6 or the 8, sometimes the 10. But let's
I
say
don't-
we're putting him as the 6. He's playing that role. How would you think our play would be different? Better, worse, whatever?
I mean, I know he can do it right. I think in that situation, though, I think you're going to see Hendo back in that. I think he plays the double pivot and McAllister takes that spot on the right in the more advanced role. Just because, I mean, I know that we've seen McAllister play deep, like especially recently. Brighton have picked up a ton of injuries. They're playing Casado at fullback, for Christ's sake. They have had Grosh at fullback. They're basically playing their midfielders in defense right now. And so McAllister's been pushed back. We've seen him play it. I know he can do it. I just think his best attributes are his creativity going forward. Yeah. And I think I think that you stack him up top in front of Trent, and you have Hendo and Trent sort of in the double pivot behind. That's what I would think you would see.
That experiment would scare me. Like Hendo in that role, I think would scare me. How about you there, Gally? He messed up my question over here, but
no, I don't think I don't think Klopp will be signing McAllister to play in the 6.
Probably not.
I honestly believe if he thought he needed to spend that much money on a midfielder from Brighton to play the 6.
But let me ask you this:
he'd
then.
buy Caicedo.
Let's say we sign him, right? He's like 2 midfielders. Yep. We sign him, and we sign the attacking midfielder, whatever. If Fab is injured, you guys would be putting Hendo there over McAllister? Because I'd be afraid of that experiment. Would you, Yelly?
I have said this all along. The number one thing for me in this window is I need a absolute Fab understudy who can become the number 1, which is why I was like a strong proponent of like the Gravenberch rumors, because he can come in and play both in a single 6 like Fab plays today in this system, or in the double pivot. He can do a few different roles.
He came from a double pivot system,
and he also doesn't force you to spend so much that he has to be a starter, because his wages and his fee won't cost you so much that he can't be a reserve. So, like, if you can get Gravenberch for 30-35 million, and he is your Fab cover who pushes Fab, and maybe is just better than Fab right now. Who knows? Like, he might be just sitting on Bayern's bench. That happens, right? We all know it. If that's the case, then I think you hit a home run with a player like that. So I'd rather someone like that. I don't want to go out and spend $100 million on Declan Rice unless the decision is, like, we're going to buy Declan Rice, which means we're going to sell Fab and we're going to make some money. And we're going to take that money and reinvest it in other players. And I've never been one screaming for Declan Rice, but I think Declan Rice.
There's a clause in his contract he can't talk to kids after the match.
Whole nother passion. But like all of these types of like, I just, there's so many different players out there between Mount, McAllister, Rice. I mean, Gravenberch there.
Are you guys telling me that in the ideal scenario of signings, you guys still have Fab starting at 6? That's what I'm getting. Is that right, Gally?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Like with the signings we do in your head, like you're like, we'll sign this guy, we'll sign that guy to improve. But still in that scenario of like a good summer scenario, you still do have Fab starting next season at the 6.
Yeah, I'm fine. 11. I am fine with Fab starting next season as long as they get him some form of cover and competition. Or tell me what youngster is going to push him and show it in preseason that they can. Because if he comes back next year, old man Fab, with his kid now and no baby in the womb to use as an excuse for 11 months for why he doesn't play well. If he doesn't have those things built in, I'm worried. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do worry about that too. Maybe like a full summer as opposed to like the crap we had will make him, because we did see a tired and a pretty horrific Fab. And that's why I wondered, like, do you guys put him in, in a good scenario of like, we signed this person, we signed that person. Do you guys still put him, Bickler? Do you put him in your ideal starting 11, I guess, ideal scenario starting 11 as your 6?
So here's this is so crazy because like if I look at this midfield, like logistically speaking, like all three probably need to be replaced. All three positions. But I think the one that you can get away with right now is Fabinho for now.
That's
like Henderson can't make 90. He can't play twice a week. So that has to be priority number one, like that spot. We know on the other side, Jones is holding it down. So there is a viable option, even if it's not ideal. So for me, it's like, it's got to be Hendo. It's got to be that other position. You can get away with not immediately replacing Fabinho, but you have to have the ability to heavily rotate him next year, which I don't know that we have. I know like Bajatic took off this year, and I know he looked really good. I feel really, really nervous putting all my eggs in the basket of a kid. And we've done this for a lot of years, whether it be Harvey, whether it be Jones, whether it be, for a while it was Wilson. We did this with Jordan Ibe coming up, we do this and it very rarely works out, right? Trent's are 1 in 1,000, probably more like 1 in a million. So I think that's the last spot that you can probably get away without immediately replacing, but you have to address the depth behind it like immediately.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just, I guess I'm having like flashbacks from earlier. So if we do have and then, like Trevor brings out a good point too, with Basetic, we don't know what we're going to get. Are we going to get the same guy that went away? And is that an injury that's going to keep coming back? It's not the prettiest one, but let's take a look at this over here. Top 4. Well, Arsenal choked it away. We were talking about it this morning with the Polish Prince, but the top 4 race with Newcastle, there is now Newcastle losing a point. We're chasing 2 teams now instead of just United. And honestly, like this morning, before watching the game today, I was like, hey, a win against Leicester is huge, because with them playing Newcastle now and us beating them, they really will need something out of that game. Having said that, having watched Leicester today, unless they get the first goal against Newcastle, you see a team out there that's pretty much checked out and quit. So much talent, but the heads are not there is what it looks like. I mean, they stopped running after like the 50th minute. It felt like they were like, we're not getting back. When you get the ball, give it to us. We'll see what we can do. Bittler, top 4 chances. Give me a percentage.
I'll go 55%.
Really? Damn, man.
Yeah.
I'm the only pessimist remaining.
I'll go 55%. I think there's a real chance that one of those 2 teams could drop points. I think the real thing that everybody needs to know and probably wants to know more specifically is the huge fantasy implications from a playoff standpoint that this has for Galley, who is 9 points behind me.
I'm bringing it up. I was getting there by the end of the show.
I am so thoroughly disappointed that Cancelo really did not help my season.
The fact that he did. He actually did.
Disappointed.
Cancelo helped your season more than you knew, because you got so many substitutions throughout the season. You picked up points that you won matches you never would have won with your garbage-ass team. You actually won head-to-head matches, and I would get texts from people like, I can't believe he just beat me again. He hasn't looked at a team in 2 months. This guy's in Germany.
Keys, I will appear on one of the fantasy football shows on a Thursday night to give my tips on picking players from the Bundesliga in the Premier League fantasy.
It's quality. You're the first person ever to win a match with a player in Serie A, the Bundesliga, and La Liga at once on your roster.
Hey, it's all about opportunities. Everybody
auto sub.
Tim thought it was like money conversion. He thought it would just the points would just transfer over from Bundesliga.
Multiplied with the Deutschmark. Okay, Galley, give me a percentage.
So I'm gonna go like just below Paul. I'm gonna go like 49%. I'm gonna go just under 50, and here's why. I still need us to get 6 points. And I know I keep saying this, as good as we're playing and as nice as it is to watch them actually look like they're always attacking and they have like a tactical awareness on the pitch, they still had opportunities today where they gave chances. They were ready to go behind twice before they scored. Like
Villa will punish those two.
Alli makes the great save in the first half. Barnes might have got elbowed right in the face, like coming across the middle of the pitch. Like there were a few different times that different moments could have went in a lot of different ways early before we even scored. So I'm still not 100% confident like we can just guarantee 6 points to the end of the year. That said, if you give me 71 points, I think we're in the Champions League. And the reason is I think there is a loss and a draw for Newcastle. As sad as it makes me say that, I think Newcastle's run-in of Brighton, Leicester, a team fighting for their life, and Chelsea, a team that's starting to slightly figure it out with some of their players playing better and better and just kind of getting it together, scoring goals. Chelsea changes all of this, people. Because if Chelsea gets a win against Newcastle and United, we have a legit shot.
What if Chelsea gets us in off a Raheem Sterling goal? How do we feel about that?
I would love it.
I'll take it. I'll even celebrate with Fat Frank if I have to. I mean,
yeah. Oh, I will. I think if we make the Champions League because of Fat Frank, and somehow Everton go down at the same time because of Fat Frank, Kazi may die. He may
on the bottom and the top of the table.
Millie may literally not have a dad. Like, seriously.
Yeah, see, I'm still at I went up to 34%, slowly climbing over here. And I think it's because of this. Sheldon says both Newcastle and United are going to drop points, but they have to do it twice. And I think that's what kind of worries me. And obviously goes back to, because I'm a pessimistic guy, goes back to Galley's talking about us getting 6 points in the first place. But more than that, I think, and yeah, sadly, it really relies on Chelsea over here. This league is so freaking weird. I never thought Brighton would get hammered by Everton at home either. And that was kind of, I think, looking past. Sparky is up to 35. So we're slowly joining you guys with Sparky coming from behind.
That's like a 35% chance that he doesn't mention Henderson. So we're doing all right.
I was just going to say, how angry are we going to be, though? Literally. If those two goddamn teams end this season on 72 points and we got to look back on the freaking roster of results and see the loss to Bournemouth, the loss to Leeds at home. The loss to Leeds at home. Everyone talks about, the Leeds Forest back-to-back, and we talked about those 6 points for the World Cup. It's the 3 points at home to Leeds with Jesse Marsh and those tight goddamn jeans running up and down the Anfield pitch. That shit's what's going to fucking do it for me, I'm telling you right now. Even worse than Wolves. Wolves in January was bad. We lost 3 times to Wolves in 15 days. I don't know how it happened, but we figured out a way to do it. The Brighton losses, there's so many bad ones. The Brentford draw up 3-0 or 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Sparky says, it's our own fault. It would be more
100% Sparky.
You woke up way too late is what I would say if we miss it by a point at the end, because there were so many missed opportunities throughout that we kind of
I still look, and I'll still say this. I still don't think we're that good.
We don't deserve it.
No,
I think we talk about how we look. We think about how vulnerable we look defensively. That's why I said my biggest worry was Villa coming up. And I will say this: we got healthy at a time when everybody else was getting tired and getting injuries, and we're playing once a week. I think those combinations of things are why we're back in it, and it doesn't scratch the surface of what we need to solve for next year.
But you still can't. You can't chalk up the fact they needed to do this and they did it. And
for sure.
We looked at the table earlier and the only thing we didn't talk about, right? We talked about us getting in top 4. We talked a little bit about relegation, where people are finishing, and what's going to happen. We didn't talk about City and how City once again has just freaking, just run down the second half of the season. I think all three of us, at least me and Paul, I'm pretty sure, but I think all three of us basically said all year we thought City would run down Arsenal eventually. I was the asshole who kept saying they would walk the league, and we're a result away from them winning by 10 points, and then I pretty much get my point.
I would love to know what City does after the first of the year. It's absolutely insane every year. And it's almost like they just go into their little charging stations like good little robots and plug in like a Tesla and then unplug. Like it's ridiculous how they do this every year.
And I think it's the pressure they put on the team that's ahead of them as well. I mean, it's almost like in NBA, they were like, okay, they're gonna have a run. We're gonna have to withstand the run. Like when a team is down, it almost like feels like that. It always happens. Yeah. It's like, are you gonna be able to hold it off enough and then get the lead back? It almost reminds me of that. And I think teams become paranoid. And I think we saw that Arsenal was not really. And you know what's weird is, when we were talking about it and, we said City is still going to catch up and stuff. One of the things we talked about a lot was the fact that Arsenal is going to play all these Thursday games.
And then they get knocked out.
More tired and stuff. And I really almost think, and we talked about this in the past, like in the morning coffee shows too, that almost hurt them. Not playing those Thursday games, because I think they were in some kind of a rhythm of playing constantly, not thinking, just playing. I think having the full week to think about, we have to get 3 points because City is constantly winning, kind of messed with that team's head, not Arteta's Lego head, but the squad's head, that, they kind of really choked it away. They lost some ridiculous, dude, they were 8 points ahead. Like what is that, 35, 36 days ago?
It's crazy.
You have to take that as a choke and a job at the same time.
Yeah. It has to be considered to be a choke job at some levels. I do think they're young. I do still think they're young. And as much as I've criticized Arsenal and not giving them as much credit as some people have on this podcast, which is by some people, I mean both of you. I have not given them much credit, and they frustrated me, and I wanted them to lose. I won't lie. I told you all this all season long. I wanted them to lose, and it kind of makes me happy. What I do look at, though, is that I don't think City gets enough credit. I mentioned this stat in the Discord channel. I don't know if anyone saw it. City, this absolutely is the stat that blows my mind of the entire 2022-23 season. Manchester City has used 23 players in the Premier League so far this year. 23 players is the least amount of players used by any team in the Premier League. So none of these small sides, these Evertons, these Crystal Palaces, no one's used less players than City. Yet that to me speaks to the fact that their squad is built so well, and they do such a good job with their physios and such a good job with their manager's ability to rotate all the matches they play. They've mitigated that many less injuries than everyone else in the Premier League. And if you're at the top of the table, quality, and you're able to put out the best, sports science, you're doing really, really special things. And I think, Pep doesn't get enough credit for what he does managing a squad. Foden the other day played a great game, and after the match they were like, how do you feel? He was like, I've wanted to play this much for 2 months. My manager had to remind me I had my appendix taken out. He actually mentioned the manager telling him he had his I think Pep is that in tune, and I think he manages a squad better. And I think it comes down to the injuries. The fact they played that few players to win a Premier League season when they're playing all these matches, competing on 4 fronts, it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, I think it's come down to basically
Thanks for that, Gally.
Arsenal could not deal with the injury issues they had, and they couldn't rotate it as much, and especially defensively, they're in kind of shambles right now. And I think it's a team that's panicking. That's why I kind of 50-50. Yeah, they have had injuries, but I think it's kind of like a choke job of looking over your shoulder all this time, which is what City does to everybody. Sadly, we know the pain. But before we leave over here, Villa game. This is the one that we probably were worried the most, really, even though it's home. It felt like the way Leicester plays, we knew we could get goals on them and stuff like that. So it wasn't as big of a worry, I think, compared to this Villa game. Bickler, give me a quick prediction in terms of what you expect to see. We almost assume it will be the same lineup, right? But what do you want to see, or what do you expect to see on the field?
I think the lineup is going to be, I think, the same lineup. I mean, the only thing you could say is like Diaz did not have a great match, so maybe we see Jota. But that's the only other change that I could see happening. Yeah, so I think it'll be the same. I think it'll be the same player-wise.
And result-wise?
I think we'll win 2-1, and I think it will scare the bejesus out of everybody.
That's great. Thanks, guys. Sparky's new copy paste is 2-1, so he is going with the 2-1. God damn, you guys! Everybody is going with the 2-1. It's going to be heart attack weekend. Gally, make my day and give me an easier score prediction over here. Say we're.
I'm going to say 2-0, but it's a late winner, a late, closer. It's still a 1-0 squeaky bum time till late, but then we score another one late. 2-0, another clean sheet.
I'm going with the standard issue 3-1 over here. I just find it, again, like, are you guys shocked with the number of clean sheets? Obviously, we don't play that line as high anymore, and the midfield has played a lot better, but the number of clean sheets kind of, I mean, Ali has done an excellent job. I mean, most of the clean sheets credits, probably at least half of it should go to him. But are you guys shocked at how many we're getting, Gally, in terms of like the number of clean sheets this team has accumulated? We did not see this coming, I don't know, like 2-3 months ago, that's for sure.
I absolutely am, based on what we've seen and especially how we've like had this, or how we have conducted this podcast each Monday night, talking about the defensive inefficiencies and ways our midfield leaks in goals. The fact that we're even anywhere near the top of the table in clean sheets is a really surprising factor for me. So it's kind of a good sign to go into next year, in my opinion. We've started to figure out defensive awareness, which is, to Paul's point, shocking with half of our players.
Yeah, it is. Do you think it's due to the line not being so high, or it's like the adjustments we've made, Bickler, or is it just everybody, like the confidence building up and everybody kind of playing better together? I mean, we seem to be, you don't want to say like in the old days, but it's more of a hunting impacts. The press seems a lot better overall. And I know we have played against teams maybe that are not that good, but those are the exact same teams we were talking about earlier that we've lost points to in the past.
I think it's the fact that the press is back in some form. I think that definitely helps. When we look vulnerables on the counter and transition, which has been consistent all year, and I honestly think that in a weird way, having Trent in that double pivot allows him to fall back into a safer position with Konate behind him. And I think when I look at this last match, we didn't really talk about this, but I thought like what I was really impressed with is I thought that Robbo has basically reformatted his game. And I thought he looked comfortable for the first time as a central defender in the back three. And I thought he looked really good. Really good. And that's promising to me because, that sort of rampaging terrier-like work rate that he provides on the left side is great and all, but the wheels have been coming off that train for a while. And I think that him being sort of this more recessed central defender and then still providing that outlet is the best of both worlds, both for the club and for him. So I think that has a big part to do with at least today.
And I agree. Like you mentioned, Diaz not having the best game, which he did not, especially on the ball. But I think his presence, his work rate and stuff really helps Robbo on that side too. And I think, the press being back, I hate to say this, but I think mainly because we've kind of gone away from the Nunez experiments, and with the front three that's playing, whether it's Jota instead of Diaz or whatever, are a lot better at starting that press and working together on the press than we had before. So let's hope they can add Nunez to that page and kind of like bring it in, because I feel like that makes a huge difference and helps out the defense. So here's the hoping, more like Gally's score over here for the 2-0. But this time next week, we'll be in the top four. Bickler. This time next week. Will Newcastle choke twice? Yes. Are we in there?
Sure. Fuck, I don't know.
I love
Sure, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
It's all about the confidence in your prediction. I love it. How about you, Gally? Are we going to be talking about? Are we going to keep top 4 next Monday?
I think we're still talking next Monday about us having a shot at the final week, but I think it's going to come down to how United does against Chelsea midweek. I think it's going to come down to how. I mean, we're going to go right down to the final Sunday if we're going to get into the top 4.
Go Fat Frank is all I gotta say. Rooting for Fat Frank just feels dirty, but it is what it is. Well, that's it for us this week. Let's hope we are talking about a top 4 next week. And my percentage and Sparky's percentage has gone over 50 by then, and things are looking good for us. Have a great rest of your week. I'll be back Wednesday morning with Gordo and John, and hopefully we'll be talking about some good favorable results throughout the week over here. Have a great week, everybody.